Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show podcast. You ever thought to yourself, man, I got to reduce my write-offs. I'm not sure how to do this. They keep climbing and maybe I should drop some PPOs. Well, today we're going to show you how dropping PPOs isn't the only way to reduce your write-offs with our CEO, Dr. Barrett Straub, and we give you a step-by-step treatment plan. So don't miss this. Listen up. I know you guys will enjoy it, and we'll see you soon. Hey, we're back. I love this.
Cheers.
This is freaking hard work figuring out the lives of dentists.
It is.
And so we're so excited you guys are here. If you're listening, welcome. If you're watching, welcome times two, because we're on Monday afternoon. One of the fun things I get to do with my partner here, our CEO, Dr. Barrett Straub, is we get to podcast with the help of Andy Conkle. And we work hard. Like last week, we had the best practices seminar in our office. We had teams from all over. You actually did a virtual. We had a master class. You did a virtual. And so Monday is our time to just kind of get organized. We do our team meetings. And then in the afternoon, we crack a beer and do a podcast.
You got it.
And so if you guys are watching on video, you know, Barrett is a DC on the disc profile. Yes. I'm an I, so I come equipped with nothing, actually, except for plastic cups. And he has like notes. And today, you're going to love today's podcast. Today's podcast is about dropping PPOs and why it isn't. Well, it's not about dropping PPOs. Right. It's dropping PPOs isn't the only way to reduce your write-offs. So that's our title today. You got it. And so I'm just going to encourage you to sit back, nestle in, grab a beer if you want, you know,
appropriate time of the day.
If it is.
Yeah.
We're hoping it is. And then we're going to walk you through this. And we spent a lot of time really taking a look at numbers, studying great dental practices. And today our goal is to bring it and give you a strategy. Now, I want you to talk about why this is an important topic.
Yeah.
You don't have to drop PPOs. Let's start with the why.
Right. So the why is that, you know, you've been hearing, if you've been listening to our podcast, we've been talking about our financial gaps and those 4 places where money leaves your practice between your gross production and the time you get to put money in the checking account. The first gap, and the biggest one often, is what we call the effort gap. And that's basically made up of your write-offs. Right. A big portion of that. And we've been talking a lot about with our clients and with other dentists is that finding the participation in insurance that makes the most sense for you and reducing that and reducing your exposure to those insurances to find that write-off percentage that works the best for you. So we've been focusing a lot on PPOs, and being able to reduce that. However, we don't want the focus only to be on the only way to reduce your write-offs is to drop PPOs, because it's not. There's some other strategies that you can use, like starting tomorrow, that you can use to lower your write-off.
100%. And so we're going to go down that path today, and I'll just throw a couple stats at you to get your attention here. So one of the things we do in the podcast, because I'm a CE junkie, is I like to learn. And so anytime we have a podcast, an expert on the podcast who knows a lot about PPOs, what you need to know is they gather a lot of data. And so some of the data points to a couple things that are important to know as a dentist. So according to a lot of the experts in the industry that deal with PPOs, the average write-off is approaching 45%.
Yes.
So that's important to know. And we're not going to be bashing PPOs, or maybe we will, but you need to know that. The other thing to understand is that fee-for-service practices are skyrocketing. Mm-hmm. And COVID was the first point of contact for them to be able to do that. And according to a lot of experts, it was at 8% prior to COVID. And now post-COVID, for a lot of these different reasons, it's up into 18 and 19%. And then one last piece of data before we start digging into this. I always had the average overhead in dentistry at 71%, according to dental economics. And now some people are saying it's as high as 74%. So those are things that you need to know. I would say start with the data first.
Right.
You need to find out where you're at first, and now we can start to work backwards. But really the point number one is that dentists, no matter where you're at, they're working harder for less return. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. We're in a economy of inflation. We're in an economy of low dental workforce demand. And we're in an economy of decreased reimbursement from insurance,
right.
higher costs of doing business. So our margins are getting tighter.
Right.
And that's just a reality. And it just doesn't mean that it can't be overcome. It just means we got to think smarter and track the numbers and make some smart decisions.
Right. And one of the hottest topics that we've had recently, or this is probably the number one topic that comes up week after week, we hear the words stress and burnout. Now, they're very real in the whole, economy or any job that you have, but dentists experience this at very high levels, as you can imagine, because decreasing returns would lead to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the quickest ways to burnout and stress is a feeling of lack of control over your practice. And we hear from dentists every day in our coaching that say, I thought this would be different, number
right.
one. Number two, we see dentists all the time say, I'm going to produce more. I need to produce more, only for the outcome of that added production to be the same reduced margin
right.
and even more burnout.
Right. Now go back to the control thing, because I just had like a visceral response.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is dentists have control issues?
We have a control issue. We have psychological problems around control. All of us, myself, more than any dentist anywhere. Love to control everything about life.
And if you're an entrepreneur, you don't need to be a dentist to have control issues. I mean, I won't even let somebody else drive my car because I have to be in control. So when you feel a loss of control, it starts to eat away at your confidence. And the truth of it is that you just have to work harder and harder and harder for more and more and more.
Yeah, exactly. And let's lay this point out. Many dentists out there feel loss of control because they find, and they don't know why, but they find out that more production doesn't equal more profitability
right.
in every case. And so how could that possibly be?
Right.
I just worked my tail off to produce more. I still don't have more at the end of the day in the bank. What is going on? That loss of control, that's a daunting topic to figure out.
Right.
And we have it. Our gaps calculator is going to help with that. And this first gap is write-offs. And write-offs are such a big part of this because as we increase our top line production, many times dentists are doing that via more insurance participation.
Right.
Or more patients coming through the door. And unless you're tracking your write-offs per insurance, per membership plan, per even your cash patients, every segment in your patients, you don't have control over it. Once you have control and know the numbers, now you know what you can do in order to improve that profitability. And that's where stress and burnout decrease, because you can say, I don't love the numbers I'm at, but I see a path. I have hope now.
Right.
And the more hope we have, the less stress and burnout we have.
Right.
And you can't have that hope as an entrepreneur unless you see the numbers and know the path forward.
Right. So 3 things I want to say before we start. Number one, on what you just said is all change processes start with number one, telling the truth. So if you're listening to this as a dentist, you just got to know where you're at.
Right.
Most dentists don't know where they're at.
Right.
Number two, if you don't have any data, we're just talking. Do you know what I mean? Most dentists feel stressed. Yeah. They come to us and I ask them and they're like, I don't know. I'm not sure. You need to know the data. Data removes all emotions. And then the third thing before we get into this is who needs to lower the write-offs? And we need to put that ground rule. It's both PPO and fee-for-service practices. This isn't just one or the other, right? Explain that.
Absolutely. So it's easy to say if you participate in insurances, you're going to have bigger write-offs than fee-for-service. That's just fact most of the time. And we think all dental practices, whether you're group, big group, small group, solo, high insurance, or totally fee-for-service already, you need to track your write-offs.
Right.
I've been a fee-for-service dentist. My write-offs historically have not always been perfect, because you say, well, I'm a fee-for-service dentist, so I don't need to track that. And then you find out that you're giving away a lot more than you thought for free. And you're doing pro bono care and stuff on your patient, on your family during normal clinic
Which
hours.
you should.
Yeah, absolutely. You should do all that. Do as much pro bono as you can.
Right.
But just track it and know it. And it's just one of the gaps. So our point is that this isn't just for high insurance participation dentists. This is for all of us.
Right. And let's just go there. So if you decide to make the trek of being completely fee for service, give me a reasonable ballpark. Well, like, what would you say? Is it 10%? You're always going to have 10, 8, 5% write-offs.
I think you could, I think you could get, and I don't have like studies to prove this, but I think 6 to 12% you're going to be in that fee for service. And I think if you're fee for service and you're watching your gaps and watching your write-offs and budgeting for it and having a strategy, you should get under 10%.
Right. And that's where you can take this data and you can do a fee adjustment and go, listen, I'm doing free dentistry for the people I feel like we should do that for.
Absolutely.
And as a result, we can take a look at our economic model, which might include family members, my team, blah, 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 and then, the dentists here in Milwaukee, I love it. Like, they'll restore the priests, and I've had people do the police officers, and they're just like, I want to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing your numbers allows you to do that.
100%.
Which is fun.
So let's go into concept number one. So really, though, the number one concept in reducing your write-offs is team compensation percentage is too high. Now, that's your biggest expense in any business. Can you explain that?
Yes. So if you look at your overhead and your team compensation percentage is north of 30% or even higher,
right?
I want you to look at your write-offs. And if you think about it this way, we as dentists have to staff our businesses based on our gross production.
Right.
Okay, so let's back up. Gross production minus write-offs, net production.
Right.
Okay. We have to staff our practices based on our gross production. So let's say we do $2 million of dentistry due to our master fee, our gross production. We need to have the people to produce that.
Right.
But what if we're writing off 40% of that?
Right.
So now we're net production is just north of, $1 million. And let's say we're collecting not 100%. So we see practices all the time producing to collecting 1.1.
Right.
Okay. So now our team compensation percentage is just going to be too high because we're paying on 1.1, but we're producing 2. So we have a $900,000 effort gap.
Right.
Okay. So it's just logistically going to be more difficult to get that team compensation into the ballpark of 25, 26, 27%.
Right.
Because we have to have enough people to produce that 2 million.
Yeah. So you're provoking a lot of thoughts here, is that, and let's just go there, you probably have one or possibly 2 people at the front that work for the insurance company, but you pay their salary.
Absolutely.
And you have all of these challenges that happen as a result of that. And you just feel like you're throwing more and more and more at the top line. Now, one more thing, I don't care what software you have, whether it be Dentrix, EagleSoft, Open Dental, the gross production is like an easy number.
Right.
You can open it up and there it is. Yeah. It's right there.
Right.
But write-offs, I got to do a little digging. Net production doesn't really show up all that easily. I got to program my computer, and I don't want to create any, conspiracy theories here. But the truth of it is that you can actually work less when you start to close this gap. Yeah. So, and let me just say this, I want to beat this. Most dental practices in the United States are going to have to be some form of hybrid practice. Mm-hmm. So if you're listening, here's the decision you need to make. You need to make what kind of life that you want to have, and then decide, what dials do I play with? If I'm going to have PPO in there, I might do a fee for service, grow that side of it. The truth of it is most of them will have to have a hybrid. So please don't hear you got to be completely fee for service or you got to go the other direction. Our job is to give you some clarity so you pick how you want to go to work.
Yeah. I mean, our motto is better life, better practice. That's about balance, right? So same with PPOs and fee for service. Find that balance that works for you in that your workday looks the way you want it. You go home feeling energized instead of exhausted. Right. And at the end of the day, you have the profitability that you thought you were going to have.
Okay, so let's go to that real quick. And just unintended circumstances of this, when you have a high team compensation percentage, let's say it's 33%,
Yep.
that means your overhead's pretty high too. Now, what
absolutely.
that does is you have little or no margin. Let me explain. We live in Wisconsin. We're in Milwaukee.
Mhm.
It snows a lot here. It's sunny now, but
Right.
there are days where you lose a couple days here and there.
Yep.
You have to have margin in a business or else you go crazy.
Yeah.
You know, your team doesn't come to you in a situation like this and say, Doc, we feel bad because the snow has taken 3 of our days this month. Don't pay us.
Right.
Your landlord doesn't come to you and going, you know,
Right.
this snow is terrible. Let me mow your parking lot, but don't worry about the rent this month. So the point is that it has so many circumstances. In order to have a lower stress level, you need to have some margin in there. And so that's concept number one is, you know, we got to reduce write-offs so we can afford, you know, a reasonable team compensation. Let me say one more thing, because like I have a million thoughts in my head and I'm trying to stick to the plan. You might have a practice that does $2 million
Yep.
and writes off 40%
Yep.
and your payroll might be, I don't know, let's say it's $500,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Your dentist, your buddy next door, who doesn't have as many write-offs, has the same payroll,
Mm-hmm.
but he's got fewer people and he pays them more.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he keeps more. You know, who knows? The point is that you can actually pay people more. You could probably have a lower payroll. Your percentage, your team compensation percentage is not too high because you overpay people. Here's what I'm really trying to say. It's because your practice doesn't collect enough to be able to support the payroll. Does that make sense?
You nailed it. You nailed it. So if you're a dentist sitting at home listening, and this is a little confusing, I want you to remember this. Instead of saying, I produce X,
Right.
production is only a third of that first KPI that we all like to know. We all like to go to, you know, study clubs and say, I produce this, I produce that. Really, we should say, I produce this, I write off this, and my net production is this.
Right.
Unless we have those 3 numbers, production tells me nothing about your practice.
Right.
It tells me nothing. You could say I produced $2 million, and unless I know your write-offs and your net production, I have no idea how healthy, profitability-wise, your practice is.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, know your production, your write-offs, and your net production, because your net production is what you can actually collect.
100%. So let's go into concept number 2.
Keep it going.
And remember, we've got tools. So if you go down to the notes, you're going to see we're going to put some tools in there. So concept number 2 is before adding capacity, maximize your output. So I want you to explain that. I love that one. Explain that one.
Yeah, I mean, so think of output. Think of a widget manufacturer, and they're open X amount of days, X amount of hours, and they have X amount of people, and they have X amount of widget manufacturing machines. If all of those things were performing at maximum capacity, their output would be Y.
Right.
We can produce X amount of, we can produce Y widgets with this many hours, this many people. We have output too. So we have, 5 chairs and we're open 4 days a week, for instance, and we have 31 hours of clinical, available chair time, and we have this many. There's an output there.
Right.
And most dentists are not maximizing your output. It's hard to maximize it. You're probably never going to be 100% of your output. You want to get closer. But because we don't know our write-offs and our net production, because we just focus on production, the assumption is, well, let's do more.
Right.
Let's add a chair. Let's add a Friday. Let's add a hygienist. Let's add. And we're going to say, before you do any of that, before you add to your operational capacity, first, let's maximize your already offered capacity. So we have a bunch of tools and a bunch of concepts that go into that. And so that's number 1 is how do we maximize our capacity? Right.
And I love what you're saying. Again, this is going to be a 2-hour podcast. Maximizing your capacity is not adding ops. It's not.
No.
Adding ops is just adding ops. Maximizing capacity is making sure the 3 hygienists that I have, or 2, are fully at 95%. Now, if you're listening at home, you don't want to be everyone's dentist. You just need a couple people.
Right.
And you're like, these are my jam. These are my people. And I want to make sure that my chairs are full. You don't want to expand mediocre. Let me explain. So I own a restaurant. I've got 24 tables. Half of them are full. So I'm going to add another restaurant.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to I'm going to rent the space next to me. No, I want to make sure we are maxed out.
Now we're going to franchise a poor model.
Ooh, I like that.
Right?
And really the truth of it is there's so much sexy out there.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of courses about growing and scaling and adding and blah, 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 blah. So it's always going to be there. What we're encouraging you to do is make sure it's excellent and you got patient selection. You got the hours that you want.
Right.
And then do it. And then number 2, wait, do you want to go in a different direction? Fill your chair?
No. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Look at that.
Yeah. So
He's so darn organized.
4
I'm telling you,
of maximizing your output.
working with this guy is the best thing ever. Cause I don't even know what we did an hour ago. And he's got them all organized. 2.1, 2.2, now 2.1, if you're following along, fill your chair. Okay. So now we talked about, capacity. So talk about filling your chair.
Yeah. So, I mean, so much of this, if we just pause and we think logically, right? So I need more money, or I need to have more profitability, or I feel like I need more production. Well, first, let's look and see if our current chair is filled.
Right.
So let's track our hygiene chair. If that hygienist sees patients for 8 hours on a Tuesday, let's look back and say, of that 8 hours, how many hours was a butt in the chair?
Right.
That's a percentage. It's retroactive. You have to go back and research that. And it doesn't take long. It takes a few seconds.
Right.
So we want hygiene chairs to be 90, 95. Doctor's chairs, 95 plus.
Right.
So let's make sure our chair is filled. Why would we invest in building out a new operatory
Okay.
if the 5 we have aren't maximized? If
Right.
we're only at 80, 85, we don't even need to build another operatory. Let's just
Right.
fill the ones we have. That's
Right.
a lot cheaper and more profitable.
Yeah. And we're weirdos about this, but if you're at 85% capacity or even 75%, I'm going to say this. Those aren't even great patients in that chair. You know, I want you at 95 going, no. We can't see you for this amount of time. That's when you're creating value.
Right.
You know, remember, this is the United States of America. No one tells you what to do. The coolest thing about dentistry is you get to decide all this.
Absolutely.
Nobody decides this for you. Now talk about the schedule.
Yes.
So the schedule is important. So we got to fill the chair, and then I love this one. This might be my favorite one of the whole podcast. But talk about the schedule. Why is that important?
You can fill your chair, and then we're going to look at, well, what's your production per hour?
Okay.
Production per day, production per visit, the 3 key metrics of production. And you could say, well, even though we're at 95%, our production per hour, production per visit isn't as high as it should be. Let's schedule more efficiently.
Right.
Let's make sure, let's do a schedule analysis to see how long it actually takes to do a two fillings, a crown, so that we're not scheduling extra time.
Right.
Let's maximize the efficiency of that schedule. So let's fill the chair, number 1. 2, now once it's filled, let's maximize the output from that same 8 hours.
Amen, brother. And I would also say this. Don't subscribe to the general theory on schedule. Time is the new rich. Nothing makes me happier than when you can leave your office at 3 or 4 o'clock or whenever you decide to. And you can say, I'm going to a baseball game. You know, we're shooting this podcast at 3 o'clock. Right. We're going to finish at 4-ish. Mm-hmm. I get to go to a baseball game. It starts at 5. Yeah. I get to be there 4:30. That's when you start to say, life is great. Don't tell yourself that your patients have to come in the evenings. This is where you start to put this in play. You can see all these factors add up to a better practice. So when you get your schedule right, what Barrett said is absolutely true. But make sure it's a reflection of how you want to spend your energy every day. If you want to do 7 to 3 without a lunch, great. You want to do 8 to 4, you want to do 8 to 5, it doesn't matter. Like, I want you to leave your office and go, I love my hours. And I'll just say this because I don't care anymore. Like seeing a patient in an evening, that's a terrible reason to see a patient. And please hear this with loving ears. If you're seeing patients in the evening, it means that you're not creating any value. People are coming to you because you're cheap and you're easy to get to, and you give up your life to serve people that don't care. And what happens is they leave you for somebody that's cheaper and easier to get to. So what we want you to do is I want people to come to you because of you. Yep. I want them to rearrange their life to come to you in the hours that you work, and that means you create value. So make sure you get your schedule right on those things. Now, when you get your schedule right, your hours, you got the right mix of service, you want to do more each visit.
Yeah,
Explain
and this
that.
kind of ties in with the schedule, right? Doing 4 resins in one visit takes a lot less time, energy, costs, manpower than it does in 2 visits. So, I mean, that's a simple example, but let's maximize our time. Let's do quadrant dentistry. Let's build enough value so the patient's like, yeah, I'm in, let's get this done. Instead of tooth by tooth by tooth.
Let me just go there. Why would I not do 4 resins in one appointment? Why wouldn't I do that? I scheduled all 4 of these.
Right.
We're going to do 1 every 2 weeks.
Right. Cost, value. There's no good reason unless you haven't built the value to the patient. Like, let's do this.
And it goes back to like, listen, we got to believe in what we're doing, and we got to have a team that surrounds us. I had a front desk team member. She was awesome. She's like, she told the doctor this, look, we're not numbing them out 4 times. Right. Come on. Yeah. Why did you separate these appointments into 4 separate appointments? That's not the best care. And he goes, I know, but she can't afford it. And the team member goes, stop that. She walked up to the front and said, listen, let's numb you up once. We're going to do this in 1 appointment. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, here's what we're going to do. And the patient said, great. Yeah. And the doctor was like, what? So sometimes we just got to get a group of people around us believing in what we're trying to do. You'll be amazed, you guys, how much your team will help you once they understand this. So
100%.
Do more each visit. And really, this isn't about like getting as much money from patients as possible. Please don't hear that. Yeah. Doing more each visit is really just about doing better dentistry while they're here.
And you're able to do more in 8 hours, more production in 8 hours, doing seeing less patients. You know, it's high quality but low quantity. Like, you want to only see as few patients as you need to produce the amount. So next, let's go to raise fees. Yeah, and maybe not even raise fees, but analyze fees. So let me lay it out and then have you comment on what dentists should do with fees. So. You
see how this podcast has changed. It's like, let's stick to the schedule. This is going to be an hour and a half. I love this stuff. I love this stuff. Okay, keep going.
So we're in a time of, like we said, we're in time of inflation. We're in a time of decreasing insurance reimbursement. We're in a time of increasing costs.
Right.
And so our margins, our profitability are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. We can decrease our write-off if our fees are aligned,
right?
If we raise our fees to where they should be. So we're not going to say just randomly raise fees,
right?
But what do you coach dentists to do with their fees, and how should the dentist sitting there listening think about their fees and what they should do next week?
Okay, so the first thing is your fees are your fees. Don't compare what somebody else does, because if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably already in the top 80%. Most dentists don't really listen to podcasts. They're just looking as a means to an end. That's my first thought. My second thought is you got to know where you are overall. So we are providers of the NDAS. Yep. If you want it, just reach out to us, kirk@actdental.com. We'll run a fee. You can just see where you are. But I'll tell you, here's why both of those are important. You have to have a master fee schedule. And people don't pay for the tooth. They pay for your time, your skill, your judgment, your expertise. Please hear that. Secondly, most great dentists that we get to see, they're not even close to the top. So we'll go into their practice and they're in the 40th percentile. I'm like, you've been to Pankey and Dawson and you're in the 40th percentile. And they are amazing human beings. But they're like, you don't understand. I practice outside of Madison. People don't have money here.
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, stop. Your fee is important. You have to make sure it's right where it needs to be.
Right.
So that you can afford to pay your team, have some margin. And sometimes dentists can't do that on their own. They need some help. They need somebody saying, you just need to raise your fees. And what you said is exactly right. We're going to do this later because that doesn't fix anything just by raising your fees at the beginning.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah, totally. And, if you're providing 90% percentile dentistry, then you got to charge 90th percentile dentistry. And if you're, you talked about it, most people are at 80%, maybe listening. So, but what's going to happen is they're not.
Right.
And they think they are.
Right.
And I was the same way. But when you look and find out the data, then it's like, oh, okay. So if you are a dentist listening and you haven't raised your fees in a couple years,
right,
it's time. And because everyone else has in the world. accept you.
Okay. So
Not even dentists. I'm talking about your suppliers, your resin manufacturers, the bottled water you buy, the electricity, the utilities. Everyone has raised the dollars less. You have to raise. We're not saying gouge people.
right.
We're saying make incremental fee increases in the fees that are not meeting the level of dentistry that you're providing.
Okay, let me speak to the dentist you just spoke to who's listening to this. I got your back. Because if you're a wuss like me, you want to give everything away. I would literally give everything away all the time.
Yeah.
And what you have to do is you got to have a group of people around you, a consultant, an accountant, somebody who's like, listen, we're not giving everything away because this is beautiful dentistry. So most dentists go into dentistry not for money because they feel like they can care for people. They want to do this for the right reason. So your brain naturally isn't built to gouge people. And that's not what we're saying. You need a group of people or support network to say, hey, listen, we got to charge more for what we're doing because what you're doing is exceptional. Yep. It's outside of that. So here's my final wrap up on that. I would say annually do a fee analysis. Mm-hmm. And we're just looking at data and have somebody other than yourself and your office manager looking at it. Mm-hmm. An outside source that says, hey, listen, your fees got to go up. Like, look what you guys are doing.
Yep.
So that's important. Now we're going to move on to concept number 3, which is, inside and outside of insurance, and why we have to think, you got to think of like inside and outside of insurance. Like, explain that.
Yeah. So every dentist, let's say the dentist has some PPO participation. They are a contracted provider for 3 dental insurance companies.
Right.
Those are 3 segments.
Right.
So insurance company number 1, that's a patient segment. 2, 3. Maybe they have a membership plan. That's a 4th patient segment. Every dentist has a patient segment of patients that pay 100% of their fee. So that is cash paying patients, uninsured, or a patient that's insured with a PPO that you're not a contracted provider. Right. You get 100% of your fee. Right. We want to maximize that segment of your population. Right. Like, we want to see more of those people.
Right. So another question, I didn't share this with you. Last week when I was talking to Shelley DeGroff, she said that when people participate, the average number of participations is anywhere between 10 and 15. So you're talking 12 to 17 segments that wouldn't include membership and uninsured. So here's the point. We have a scorecard where you can take each segment, uninsured, membership, PPO number 1, PPO number 2, PPO number 10, PPO number 11. And you can take a look at it over a quarterly basis and say, is this serving our practice? And you're going to find some of them, you're not making a penny. We had somebody sitting in this room not too long ago said, we were writing off more than we were collecting. Mm-hmm. Like, it makes no sense to participate. Right.
So there are dentists out there listening right now that are participating in plans that have write-offs as high as 50, 60%. And 2 weeks from now, they have new patient blocks that are already booked.
Yeah.
With someone that they're barely going to make any money because they have to write it off for 60%. Right. And tomorrow there's going to be a cash paying patient that says, I heard about you. I want to get in. Right. And what are they going to hear?
Can't get you in for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks.
Or more. I'll see you in September.
Right.
Okay. So a cash paying patient or an uninsured, they are a true consumer.
Right.
There's no reason for them to go to any dentist because that dentist, no dentist is on his list. There's no list. So it is about like your brand, your differentiation proposition, your reputation, how much do they value? So if you tell them, if they call you like, I am motivated, I heard about you, I want to come, and you say, I'll see you in September, they're like, I'm finding someone else.
Right.
So we have to just be knowledgeable of that. And I think it's very fair and ethical to manage your schedule to leave some spots open for different segments of patients.
Yeah. So let's piggyback on that, because the downside of not doing this is that if I sign up for 10 PPOs, I'm just going to tell you what's going to happen. Your phone's going to ring like crazy.
Yeah.
Now, you're a dentist who needs the money. So your team members are terrified because they know your head's going to spin around and green puke's going to come out if the chair's not full. And so if I'm working the front desk, I'm just going to try to fill that chair. The phone's ringing. It's easy. I'm putting it in there. And what you have to do is you got to step it up a little bit and just say, listen, let's organize our time a little bit better. And what we want to do is be able to do exactly what you said. Now, the question comes up in all arenas. You can't treat people differently. Just because they have a certain insurance doesn't mean we treat them any, more poorly or whatever. You're going to treat everyone with respect. But the important piece to remember is there's no law, not one in the United States, that tells me how to organize my time.
Yeah.
You can organize your time however you want. You can certainly treat everybody with the same respect, but what you can do intentionally, and if you listen to any other podcast other than this one, most every podcaster will say in dentistry, you just organize your time and here's the bottom line. You're building a patient base with the type of patient that you want to grow your practice with. That's all you're doing. Mm-hmm. You're not treating other people poorly. You're not kicking other people out. You're like, all you have to say is, this is how I want to organize my time.
Yeah.
And your team has got to be on board with that. And your write-offs will drop.
Right.
It's awesome. Now I want you to talk about this one. This is one of my favorite things you've ever said. I got a list of like 200 of them. But one of the things you said is like, it's not about PPOs. Stop. It is about the number of patients that pay you 100% of your fee. Like, don't get into this whole thing about how bad insurances are and what they reimburse and what they're suggesting. At the end of the day, how many of your patients pay your full fee? Tell us about that.
It's just a way of looking at participation. It's a way of looking at what is fee for service versus PPO, and right. fee for service dentists basically get 100% of their fee from all their patients. Now, many of those patients pay via a PPO plan that allows you to see listed dentists.
Right.
But the more patients that pay you 100% of your fee, the less write-offs you have.
Right.
The more net production you'll have without having to increase your gross production.
Right.
Okay. Every time you shrink that write-off gap, what happens? You get to make more money without doing more dentistry.
Right.
Last week, we had our clients here for To the Top Study Club, and one of our clients who's done an awesome job with the gaps kind of shared what they're experiencing, and they've been working on the gaps and tweaking those a little percentage at a time. And the outcome is like, they're like, we're working a couple weeks less a year and making way more. Yeah. We call it the Valhalla of dentistry.
I love it.
Right? It's like work less, make more. That's and they were and it's not about making more, but they basically said we're enjoying life more, and that's what makes our heart sing. That's what we want.
Those are my favorite stories. I don't care about the money. Nothing makes me happier. And if we're talking about the same dentist, because we get a lot of these,
right?
It's a female dentist, and you know who you are because you said it. Yeah. She was in a room of, all these dentists. She says, listen, when I started this whole thing, I was on a lot of PPOs, and it's not about PPO or no PPO, but what I did was I figured out what I needed. And I'm like, I'm just going to go down to 3 days a week. And the phone doesn't stop ringing. She's got so much more time.
Yeah.
She makes more money, and she's having the time of her life. And her kids are a little bit older. Those are her favorite stories.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you guys, you get to control all of this. All of it.
Absolutely.
You get to so don't think for a second somebody else controls your life. You control it. You just need to know these numbers and be able to make these adjustments and have the know-how. Now we're giving a step-by-step treatment plan today, but I want you to talk about this one, 3.2, which are skills. We're going to add some skills outside of insurance. We're going to do a little bit more than usual and customary. Yeah,
absolutely. So even if you're a high participation PPO doctor, there are codes and services that live outside of insurance. Either they're not covered at all. So non-covered services is one.
Right.
So if insurance doesn't cover it, you can get 100% of your fee.
Right.
You just have to know what those are. I would even say, and I'm not even going to say search out for codes that aren't covered. Look for dentistry that you're good at, that makes you happy, that you can provide value. So a lot of our clients will do sedation or implants or orthodontics, Invisalign, things like that live outside of insurance altogether.
100%.
And the more of that you do, again, balance. It offsets some of that write-off amount and makes it a little easier.
Yeah. So I'm not one to throw numbers around, but you know who you are. We have a young dentist in our community. To your point, he picked a passion. So his passion is helping children breathe. And he was a young restorative dentist. His dad works in the same practice. He's like, it's crazy. Like, he loves airway. He loves helping these kids breathe. There are weeks, Kirk, he doesn't pick up a handpiece. And he'll do $200,000 in a month. And people are sending, other mothers are coming like, you helped my friend. And so it doesn't have to be airway, but your point is pick a passion. And when you move into your passion, most likely it's going to fall outside the realm of insurance. And now game on. Yeah. You got to learn how to create value for people, because people come to see, and it goes, we're tying all this together. Right. People are now coming to see you because of you. Yep. Anybody listening to this podcast, I have one wish for you, that you enjoy going to work. And number two is people come to you because of you. Not because you're on a list, not because you're cheap, not because you're easy, because they look at you and go, you're my person. In a world that's crazy and there's so many providers, I trust you. You're my person to do this. Don't you agree?
I that's beautiful. I think that's perfect. That might be the ultimate litmus test for, should I go down the path of less PPO? If you look in the mirror and say, yeah, a lot of my patients, most of my patients really like me and our team and our culture, then you're primed for this. Right. If you look in the mirror, and that's a humble moment, if you're like, I can't say that. Right. I think most are probably coming because I'm on the list. Okay. Then acknowledge it and skill up. And work on this stuff. And within a couple of years, you can look back in that mirror and say, yeah, I've changed and I'm adding more value. I've differentiated myself, and now I'm primed to go down the reduction of the PPO.
I love that. So if you're 32 listening and you don't think your dentistry is all that valuable, think about this. You got 3 decades. Yeah. What if every year it gets a little bit better, little bit better, little bit better? By the time you're 42, you're like, whoa, I'm at 50% PPO. And then later in your career, you're at 25% PPO, whatever it is. You're making progress. Your life gets better. You've now watched your kids grow up, and you can say to anybody who says, should I go into dentistry? You go, absolutely. Right. It's the greatest profession ever. You make the rules. Right. So let's talk about this one. Yeah.
Close it out with habits.
We're giving you, Now, if you go back, if you're not taking notes, don't worry. We're taking notes for you. Check the notes, but we're going to give you a bonus round here to reduce your write-offs, and it's new habits. Explain that.
So we've given strategies, we've given tools, and we have 2 intangible things. And one's more tangible. I'll say that the first one I'm going to say is present treatment plans outside of the dental chair.
Okay, explain that.
I think the number one thing any dentist can invest any money on, the biggest ROI, the biggest thing you can do is a consultation room.
Ding, 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 ding.
Forget equipment, forget technology, forget lasers, forget CBCT. A consultation room will return more money than all of those combined.
100%.
And so your treatment acceptance will go up. Your acceptance of quadrant dentistry or comprehensive dentistry will go up as long as it's outside of a dental chair. So we have got to get this patient's mindset to separate from this very vulnerable position. I'm in the dental chair. I'm a patient. Right. I'm feeling defensive. I have some fear. And we have to switch this mindset to, let's go to somewhere else. Let's sit eye to eye, knee to knee, and let me build value. Let me educate. Let me find out what you're thinking. And I guarantee treatment acceptance goes up. The amount that you can schedule per appointment goes up. Collection rate goes up. Everything goes up.
Right. It's so funny you say that, because I was just in a 6,000 square foot office. It's gorgeous. Amazingly high producer. They didn't have 3 CBCTs. They had 3 what?
Consultation rooms.
And they were gorgeous. Yeah. Absolutely. They were intimate. They were private. My first thought was, wow, this is a huge practice. It's beautiful. And the first thing I noticed, they had 3 consult rooms. I'm like, wow, these people know what they're doing. Now, I'm not suggesting you build something like that, but we get these floor plans all the time. And that's my first question. This is a gorgeous facility, 18 operatories. Where's the consult room? And they go, what? Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, even if it's a 4-operatory, facility, you got to have a consult room.
I had one colleague of mine who was building a new office, and they said, we have this space, and it's either going to be a consult room or a closet. So what do you think we should do? Wait a minute. Oh, that's not even a question. It's got to be a consultation room. And so consultation room's the best. If you're looking for a way to differentiate yourself, you're a young dentist, old dentist, medium dentist, and you're like, I just don't feel like I'm differentiated. patients never realize or experience doctors that give them time.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I did a new patient interview in the consult room or a treatment presentation after, a week after the new patient exam in a consult room. And 80% of the time I would hear like, that was amazing. Thanks for your time.
Right.
Like they just felt like I was over giving of time and all I was doing was presenting what I normally would have in a different room.
100%. Now, one more thing on habits. I'll say this, and then I want you to bring it home, is if you're doing a lot of write-offs, I'll just give you the straight, to the point thing. Your practice depends on you. There isn't a single dental practice in the United States that got better. A leader got better. Mm-hmm. Somebody learned a little bit more. They understood more. Our best practices that we have to sit in this room, they're young, mature, later in life dentists who really worked hard on the leadership thing. Do they have to be dynamic? No, but they got better. Mm-hmm. And as a result, everybody else got better. Don't wish your team gets better. Don't wish insurance gets better. Don't wish the economy gets better. Right. You get better. And with that, you bring a team of people and patients with you. And we have something called the Practice Health Score. Now, I'll tell you why this means so much to me. We created this. You can actually figure out what kind of a leader you are. If you take this really well and you ask your team to be honest, they will tell you. Mm-hmm. And we do this every quarter.
Yep.
And so we, out of a possible
with
10,
our own team,
we've never even scored a 10.
No.
But the lowest points of Act Dental's history were when the Practice Health Score was its lowest.
Right.
We've had 3 consecutive quarters at 8.1. And my only thought, because you're now leading with me, is like, how do we get from 8.1 to 8.2
right.
to 8.3? And they tell you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. And if you ask for feedback and they feel safe telling you, then they're going to give you very constructive feedback.
Right.
This is why we rated that a 7, or this is why we rated that an 8 or a 4.
Right.
And the number itself isn't too concerning. It's what do I need to do to get it higher?
Right.
And so taking a 4 to a 6 is amazing.
Right.
You don't worry that it's not an 8. We'll get it to an 8.
Right.
But you celebrate that we took it from a 4 to a 6.
Right. Now, here's what the Practice Health Score tells you. And you can download a free copy of it. Yep. Pass it out to all your team members. It tells you how healthy your business is. And I'll say this, nothing, and I mean nothing, trumps a healthy organization. Nothing. No amount of money. When you have a healthy organization, you make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And you have low stress. I'll take healthy over fancy or smart any day.
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
I like who I am when you have a healthy group of people.
Yeah.
Agree or disagree?
100%.
Yeah. So bring us home on this. Any last thoughts you have on how we can reduce our overhead? Or I'm sorry, reduce our write-offs. Gosh.
Write-offs. Well, overhead, that's for
a whole nother one.
Yeah. I would say this. Dentistry is amazing. And the reason it's amazing, one of the reasons it's amazing, is we can design our practice in a multitude of different ways. There's not just one way to do it. The gaps that we've been promoting will show you how you can do it for your practice. Right. And you don't need to be 8% write-offs if that's not you. But maybe 25 is you and you're currently at 40. The difference between 40 and 20 is hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
And just imagine, not that you pocket that all, but just imagine what would be beneficial for your life. Imagine the value you could provide to your patients. Imagine in pro bono care. Imagine the value you could provide to your team with that extra profitability. More time. Time is the new rich. And so we're not going to always say that you have to drop PPOs. All we're going to say is here's a framework.
Yeah.
Pull your numbers and design your practice so that it serves your life, not the other way around.
Yeah. And I'll bring this home on one last thought because I think we should always point this out. I'm 53. Yeah. How old are you again?
46.
46. So we're both in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
We're on the back 9.
Well,
I'm more than you.
I'm on like hole 8. I'm like putting on the 8th green. You're teeing off on 12.
I'm definitely a 12 or 13. I'm hoping, actually I'm hoping 12. I mean, every day, every single day counts. So you might be thinking, well, no, I'll just work harder. No. Days matter for me. Yeah. Hours matter for me. I won't waste a day or an hour for anybody. I want as much time as possible. Amen. So the money is one benefit.
Yeah.
But the real benefit is when you get time back. It's awesome. And our goal here with this podcast is to help you. I want you to enjoy going to work. So I don't care how you're listening to this podcast, in your car, on your bike, walking. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go down to the show notes. We've put a bunch of tools down there. You can actually download the tools for free, fill them out. If you don't understand them, call us, email us. We will help you every step of the way because there's nothing better than getting the stories. We love the stories.
You got it.
So awesome. Good work today, buddy.
Thank you.
It's Monday.
It's a great Monday.
I'm going to head to a baseball game, but let's wrap this up.
I'm going to go to a lacrosse game.
Oh, you are? What time is it? The same 5 o'clock lacrosse game?
Yeah, it's 6.
Yeah. Gorgeous day. Absolutely gorgeous day. We're going to use it. Andy, what are you doing after this?
It's Monday, half price at a brewery. So.
We live in Wisconsin.
I don't have children.
Andy, any last thoughts you have before we round out here today?
As always, I'm just happy to be a part of this, and listening to you guys is inspirational.
Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed today. If you did, please do us a favor, hit the share button, share this with your friends because we love this whole thing. We're going to keep bringing it so you guys can create a better practice and a better life. So until you hear from us next time or you see us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practice Show. You guys enjoy your day.